Welcome to the Mentalray rendering series for 3D Studio Max 2010. In this set of videos, we will cover all aspects of the Mentalray renderer, the lights, and the materials to get you as comfortable and as confident with what can be a complex tool for 3D Studio Max. With that said, let's jump right into it and get set up for working with the Mentalray rendering system inside of 3D Studio Max. You'll see that right now we have a basic scene set up just for test rendering. But before we do anything, let's render and find out what we actually have going on. We're going to go to our production renderer. We'll render this out. When we render this out, we're going to notice that we had a scanline rendering set up. So by default for Max, we're with our scanline renderer. We want to change that over to a Mentalray renderer, to the Mentalray rendering engine. So to do that, we have a number of different ways to get to those options. But what we want to do is get to our render setup window. We can either go through our rendering menu here, we can go to our shortcut here, or we can use F10 for our shortcut key. And to adjust the setup, we want to go to our Common tab, and let's go ahead and close these rollouts. One of the things you can find in Max is that with the rollouts and the first time through, it may look like an awful lot of information. There's a lot of parameters, a lot of options, and we want to simplify that as much as possible. So just let's get rid of some of the clutter. We can go ahead and just right click on the side, and we're going to do close all for the rollouts. This just simplifies it. We're going to go to just our assign renderer rollout, and in the assign renderer rollout we have our production render. And by default, we've got it set to the scanline renderer. We have our options here. Let's go ahead and click on this one. And in our window, we want to choose the renderer that we want. We have the Mentalray renderer. We have the view file renderer. The one we want is going to be the Mentalray renderer. So let's select on that and click OK. And when we click OK, you're going to notice that in your render frame window here, some of these options have changed. We'll pull this out so we can see it. So this window has changed up. Inside the viewport, you're not going to notice really any changes though. The main changes you're going to find are going to be on your render frame window and then on some additional parameters here and there. But what we see in the viewport stays the same. So once you set your production renderer to the Mentalray renderer, you have an option below to save as default. So if you're going to be working with this, as we're going to be working with it, let's go ahead and save this as default so that if we restart Max, we don't have to reset our rendering type. So we'll do save as defaults. The default is saved. And one thing too you're going to notice at the top here, we have a new tab. We've got an indirect illumination tab that showed up, and this one is to support the Mentalray renderer. And inside of here we've got lots and lots of options, all kinds of parameters and settings to work with, and we're going to be going through these one by one, identifying how they work and how to use them best within production. But for right now, we don't want to worry about any of this. We'll get into that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and close that out, and we'll go back to our render frame window over here. And at this point, we now have our Mentalray renderer set up and ready for us. And the next thing that we want to do is go through our render frame window and the options that we have on the top, as well as some of the slider options at the bottom. And we'll do that next.